Alright guys, so we're feeling a little bit better. Just woke up again after long hours, but we're gonna watch the Info Runner talk about the Redeemer and just kind of like live talk about what they talk about. Basically, a lot of these videos, I end up watching them when I'm at work and stuff a lot. But there's usually too much information in a video on anyone's topics to write comments about it in their comment post without seeming like you're a crazy man. So it's probably just better to do video reactions to it for the most part. But this is a Star Citizen stringing community info runners. It has a couple of Australian guys, a little bit older, that review a bunch of ships and stuff like that. So and they can talk about the Redeemer.
G'day, citizens. Welcome to the Infrunners. I'm Execute, joined today by Old Man Hurst himself, Algrid. How you doing, bud?
Well, I'm probably feeling like you are. Exhausted. This is the
tad.
curse of a Redeemer.
Yeah. This is probably one of the most cursed episodes we've ever done. It is like the third time we've recorded this. But a benefit of that is that it also has aged better now because they've made, just in the last week or so, they've announced changes to this thing that has fixed some of the issues, but we still have some issues with it. So it's kind of cool in hindsight for us to go between those. But also, we recorded it on the weekend, and then there was issues with that episode. So now we recorded it with Paul again, both the two times, and we'll chuck those up on Patreon for you guys to see, for your patrons. But yeah, so we're just going to do it again because we need an episode. Because Algrid, you leave in what, 24 hours?
I go to Indonesia first and then off. But yeah,
Guys are watching Wire Away. We'll still be doing live streams, but then forget and have a party without you. Bye.
Pudding.
Yep.
How many takes have we tried so far tonight? Curse of a Redeemer.
Yeah, it is like we started at 7:30. It's now 9:30. Just like sorry, Paul feels this way. Anyway, all right. So we'll start off with the Redeemer. I think
Start off. That looks like if anything like a helicopter boss fight, like Armored Core or anything like that. This is always like even like old arcade games. This is that helicopter shape that you have.
Actually, we'll go over the stuff from its initial pitch out. I think that's probably where we should start. So I don't know if we should read all this out, but I think what we'll do then, Algrid, is for me the thing that this all kind of starts with. The problems all start with the very first thing on this list, and I think it's just a sign of the times. Way back in 2014, where when you and I kind of first saw this thing at PAX, it essentially comes down to the people that were designing it were not CIG people, right? And they were going in with passion and everything they had, and they came out with some really good ships during the Next Great Storm. I mean, but just the manufacturers were not even polished out for CIG that much at that stage, let alone kind of normal people outside the company. And I think that's kind of all snowballs out from there.
Well, the people who made the ship weren't RSI, but then after it won, they worked with RSI to make this ship fit more into the game, from what I recall, and it took a while.
Yeah, but even back then, we did have RSI ships, we did have Anvil ships, we did have Aegis ships, we did have Origin ships, we did have Drake ships. So we did have some.
Yep.
So we did have some design language for the manufacturers, but as you said, it wasn't fleshed out. And so that did give rise to weird engines or weird other stuff. So it explains some of the weirdness we saw in those.
I'm trying to think what Aegis ships that we had back then. And I really don't think there was much. It was maybe the Avenger and the Retaliator or something
in those designs.
Yeah.
For me, part of a problem comes down to the crew size. Because when you've got a pilot and two gunners, everyone went, oh, that's Freelancer, Connie, cutlass size. That means it must have X, Y, and Z. And I think when you look at what the role of the ship seems to be, which was Marines and dropship, that kind of changes the focus of what it was.
It made almost all the designs balloon, and you can see that in like the Brutus as an example, a bigger cutlass and stuff like that. What I meant though by things like the manufacturers not being filled out, like a really good example of that is the Boom Slang. It's an Origin gunship, and that's not really in their purview. They're more the luxury touring, you know, highly refined taste, and that combat's kind of like below their belt. And what I mean by that is most of their combat is defensive, not offensive. Yes, we have outliers like the 315p, not 315p, sorry, 325A and 125A and things like that. But they are more, again, in that smaller low end niche. Like, for example, we don't have a 425A or a 625A, things like that.
Yeah. Well, so when you think of how this ship was always viewed by people, everyone always viewed it as a gunship. But if it was a gunship, you'd have expected the turret information to be above the Marines. This was, I think, initially envisaged as a dropship, with the turrets being for crew to be able to, you know, support that role.
Maybe for the Redeemer.
I think looking back on when this was made, the Connie was the original N-ship, like the big Mac Daddy N-ship of all N-ships. So you're looking at size 5 guns and a number of turrets, and this was supposed to be a drop ship. Basically, I'm guessing they thought it had to defend against Connies and stuff. Maybe, but not 100% sure. Right now, it's like, if you look at the size guns that it has, I think size 4s are perfectly fine for anything planetary side, because you have like size 2 and size 4 guns in those ranges for fighter jets, anti-air ground vehicles, all of that good stuff. And when you start getting into like Connies and Corsairs and things, that's when you're starting to get into the bigger ships power level of like size 5 guns. I don't necessarily think that you need size 5 guns on the ground necessarily, unless they want to do like size 5 uh, defense turrets for like ground bases, because then that would give a lot more protection to a lot of people's bases on the ground versus like fighters and dropships and stuff.
But the actual competition,
I could see it. It's easily, you know, anti-vehicle, anti-personnel on the ground kind of thing. And dropship wise, the Redeemer, I personally see it more as a. If you look at the Valkyrie, when the Valkyrie came out and they were talking about it, they said that the Valkyrie and the Redeemer were being made to work together. So basically, the Redeemer's an escort ship that helps protect a Valkyrie. And a Valkyrie can hold like 20 people, well, 20 to 30, like 5 or whatever, depending on how you want to min max it. The Redeemers, if you had a crew of 3, pilot and 2 main turret gunners, then you would still have 2 more gunner spots, an engineer. I don't know if those shield stations will have anything, but let's just say 2 more gunner spots and an engineer, then 4 seats, and then you'll have 4 beds. So you're already looking at 11 people that could potentially be filling chairs in that ship. Now, if you have 2 Redeemers escorting a Valkyrie, and the Valkyrie for some reason does crash land on the planet, you can still load up everyone that was in that Valkyrie and take them home, which I think is the main point of this. And now the Valkyrie's starting to get size 4 guns on its little wings. So it seems like when it comes to really powerful air support, they're pushing more towards size 4 guns, especially things with VTOL mode, because the only other ships that have size 4 guns are fighters, and when atmospheric flighting comes in, they're not going to be able to just set in one spot with their size 4s like the Redeemer and the Valkyrie will be able to. And then I forgot what I was going to say about the rest of it, but we'll see.
They had a vote for the competition, and the one that won was Gunship. So it was meant to be a gunship. I can't speak to what the Four Horsemen were actually trying to design with the Redeemer. All I can say is
I'm just looking at the specs in terms of the order of what, if you're designing a gunship, you'd have expected the guns to be up front and center, whereas they're at the bottom. It's 2-man turrets for your gunners and a remote turret.
Yeah.
That doesn't say gunship. But when you've got the Marines, 4 to 6 Marines or cargo as the third item that it's got to fulfill, that's selling the point in my mind that this is more focused, or was initially intended to be more focused on a dropship. So you've already got this design language problem.
You also got to see, like, if you're only worried about dropping people off, potentially a crew of 2 on this, then you'd have 4, 12, you'd have like 12 plus that you could drop
going
off.
with the ship as well. And I think that was also part of the problem we had with the ship.
So I think they're probably the most famous or kind of well-known is these engines right here. I know you and Paul have massive problems with these engines from a lore perspective. And
I like the look of these a little bit more than the ones that are in game right now.
And kind of my last fix in the very first video was if they bring out another ship by Aegis, because this in lore is meant to be the latest Aegis ship. So if they basically brought out a ship that was like a generation behind, and the example I gave at the time was we don't have an Aegis starter ship. We do have an advanced starter in the Avenger, but we don't have a starter. So, for example, say they made a new starter and they put something akin to this. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly like these. In fact, I probably think it'd be better if it wasn't, but something that was a hybrid between this and a more standard engine. Right? Something that shows a growth or at least a step between. And again, they could go back and refine that later and add one either side of that and show that it's like a 5-step process if they really wanted to. But it only needs one step in that direction. There is just so much of a gap between these engines. And I'd almost look at not just Aegis, but across the entire game, there is nothing like this.
There's nothing.
So I would say that you don't particularly have to have anything in between, Like when you're talking about a gap and there's nothing like this in the game on any other ship manufacturer, you have to look at Aegis itself. Aegis is a military contractor. None of their ships are like any other ships in the game. Like just look at like Aegis's Titan is like a NASA space shuttle with guns and cargo space. The Aegis Reclaimer is an alien's salvage ship with like engines that turn into landing gears and stuff. The Aegis Firebird and the Aegis Raven and the Aegis Saber, they're all the same like category of ship, I guess, but they look all completely different from each other. They all have different roles. None of the Aegis ships particularly look or act like any of the other ships in the game or any other ship in the Aegis lineup, because it's the same with like the military right now, where you have top secret classified development of something in these Air Force bases and things that nobody knows about, and then all of a sudden one of these things pop up, like with the B-52 stealth bomber or whatever. It's like, where's the prerequisite to that bomber beforehand? And yeah, we have some examples and stuff. They had things that they put out, but if they didn't ever show you any of their things that they built before that, and then you're like, how did you get that? I mean, Aegis doesn't have to tell you what's in their testing facilities. It's just, this is something that they built and came out with. There could be prerequisites, but they don't have to have physicalized versions of them in the universe, because they might have not ever made mainstream production. If they ever wanted to add something like that into the game, just be a unique ship that you could find somewhere.
Like that. I even, like, because we know that from a Tavaran war that the UEE pilfered a lot of tech from a Tavaran.
Yeah.
And before the Tavaran wars, we didn't really have shield tech. We were using, UEE was using armor, yet this had shield emitters.
Yeah.
And so the thought for me was, This is, if these engines were pilfered to Varantech because we didn't have Tavaran ships at that time, that would have answered that would have kind of, from a lore perspective, solved the problem. They've taken elements from
Quaker Chewy Bars. Unleash the imagination.
And if it ain't you, we gon' know. Yeah, we gon' know.
Even if it's not Tavaran, just saying it's got some kind of new tech in it, either human or alien or something that's been found. Even like at the time, this had special shield emitters. That's kind of what they called them, shield nipples or whatever they called them afterwards. But we're now getting emitters across all ships. So are they still going to be special anymore, or are they helping it recharge faster? That's all things.
Well, in the original brochures and stuff, it said that this ship has it's basically like shield boosters. I guess that's what they're saying, shield emitters. But they made it seem like the Redeemer was able to amplify the shield capability of the ship. So that's part of the reason why even now, when they reduce the shield size from size 3 to size 2s, and you have like 6 size 2s now in the ship, that I still think that they can balance the ship however they want with their shields, because you still have 2 dedicated areas on the ship based around shields that could amplify them or whatever else to make this, more or less powerful, which I think is kind of interesting.
Things that we kind of have to wait and see now with the new components being rejigged on this thing. But for the actual engines, I never had a problem with personally, but across the entire...
I still like this big gun right here compared to the small gun that's on the front, to be honest. I would be okay if they like shrank this one down and then boosted this one up or something, but
entire community,
I don't know.
It made or break the ship. Made or broke it for most people.
Certainly people either loved them or hated them.
Yeah.
I like the look of the engines. I like the way they seem to work. I like the look of them. But my problem was they were just so unique and so by themselves that they did not fit the verse.
Yeah. And there was talk as well.
I don't know if they don't fit the verse. I mean, there's already a number of crazy things in this, like alien tech. I mean, we don't have propellers or anything in the game. Like, because for me, like the Redeemer is a helicopter. And it's like the only other engines that they would have had for this would have been like the VTOL vertical rotating Drake engines, which is what they kind of wanted to try at the beginning. And then you have like jet engines, neither of which would really look good on this ship or function well. It doesn't seem like.
Well, too, wasn't there, of making it so that it could, it's like this, it can articulate and face down, so you could kind of hover. That would be kind of cool. But it was never ever shown in these concepts. It was just a thought people had. I think it would personally be kind of cool to even possibly rejig the engines, because like they can only really, as you see up in this concept above me, the 2 silhouettes up there, they only really close and open to a point. Maybe if you made them so they could actually go out completely flat so it can hover better, maybe just rejig them slightly, and even kind of you could even kind of keep some of the styling and maybe move them more back towards normal engines if that's something they want to do. But that is a lot of work but not a lot of gain. So
and
it's a secondary for me.
And given that now we've also got we've got the VTOL mode as well as the landing mode. So if you had the engine that did spin sub over like that for VTOL mode, that again gives more.
I would say the engines are fine and they don't need to work on it. Now, if you wanted to make it to where the engines looked more normal, and there was like a separate mode for VTOL or whatever, probably the simplest thing you could do is make it slide right here in the middle. So close the nutcracker back into this shape, make it to where when they're together, this is a big back thrust shooting out the back here. And then when you enter VTOL mode, just have the bottom part slide forward. So this could slide up here, and then you'd have a lower and an upper thrust for up and down motion in VTOL. So it'd be able to go up and down pretty quick. That's probably the simplest thing that I could say if you wanted to change anything with it. But I think these look perfectly fine.
It gives more credence to these engines and makes them have benefits or fit.
I think the benefit thing is a key point, Algrid. They don't really have any benefit right now. Now, maybe down the line we'll get something that do that, but at the moment, with the way they kind of move, all they seem to do is look different. And what is it?
I have an idea. Like, the benefit that I think is in the game right now is that when you look at the lore of the ship, it says that it has, like, these engines are designed to give it VTOL and like forward thrust. That is the benefit of the ship. So when they have atmospheric flight coming to the game, fighters and things of that nature are not going to be able to just sit in one spot with their guns forever. Like, the Arrow and stuff might be able to do it a little bit more because it's a lighter weight ship, but like your Sabres, your Hornets, things like that aren't going to be able to just hover above a POI and shoot people because their jet engines are going to overheat and shut down and they're going to end up crashing onto the surface. The Redeemer is the only ship that has engines designed to basically do VTOL and forward thrust at the same time. And that is basically where the power of the ship would be as a helicopter, because it means that it could easily fly and hover around a POI and guard it or provide ground support more than a lot of other ships, because even the Valkyrie has VTOL thrusters, but you don't have forward thrust when you have the VTOL thrusters moving up. So the Redeemer's like one of the only ships that I can think of that has the potential capability of forward thrust and VTOL thrust at the same time. And that is a very unique feature that would give it a lot of power when atmospheric flight comes in, as long as it stays that way.
Does it do? Make them travel faster or something? Like, it just, there's no real reason to have this whole funky nutcracker system.
Yeah. Now, because this is a ship that I think was so much supposed to be like a prowler, you look at the prowler's wings, the feathery type arcs on the prowler's wings. When they're deployed, when it's landed, they actually end up giving cover for the troops as they're getting out. So they actually do have a purpose.
Yeah.
But these don't seem to do anything, but as you said, look cool.
Yeah.
So these are a problem that exists both in the verse and for the ship.
Yeah. So all right.
I'm just gonna try and look it up real quick because I don't remember exactly where it is. I know it talks about these engines though. Vector lock thruster. Unique thruster design enables an unprecedented amount of mass manipulation by positioning the twin optimal locations from the ship's center of gravity. This encompasses the benefits of increasing the overall stability of the vessel, as well as expanding the combat maneuvers available to the pilot. Utilizes the exposed surface area to draw heat away from vital systems, which that basically says that it might cool the systems off a little bit better. I mean, that's interesting, potentially, but maybe your infrared's higher. Minimizing possible wear and increasing overall engine performance. Hands-on throttle and innovative flight controls result in a gunship that feels like nothing else. I'm pretty sure there's somewhere that mentions it being used for VTOL. But even this, it's saying that you're going to have reduced heat on your systems because it's getting vented out to the atmosphere right here. So these things are going to be probably producing a lot of like infrared heat, but it's going to keep your systems cool. I would still say if we're able to find the stuff at some point with the thrusters in VTOL, that it would be better at flying VTOL around an area for sure. And it should just be kind of hovering around anyway. It's going to be tankier and beefier than a fighter in any case.
Well, as you said when we were talking before the show, that's the outside. So let's kind of go in the side. So this is an older video from way back in 2014 of what it used to be, and we're just going to look at the one room here. So we've got a couple of different shots of the kind of back room, and you can kind of see how much it's changed. But the beds were a big thing that I'd forgotten about before we went back to look at these, and they are way smaller now. But even if you kind of can contrast this now to what it was, this looks so much wider than the one we have right now.
Yeah, and one of the problems I always had with this ship when it came out was the beds were just too small. It was like when you got in the beds, it was almost like your concertina, shrunk down. And
yeah, they're like coffins, aren't they? There's like a little screen.
and when you look at the bottom, bunk, it's like literally inches off the floor.
Yeah.
When you get up to it. And so they're really hard to get into. Now you can see there are 3 beds. There's 3 crew. You had a dining table. It was very Connie-esque in that interior space or usage of the space. The interesting one was at the turret position.
Yep.
So when the turret is lifted up, you're actually able to get into the cargo, into the cargo hold. Which was 2 SCU cargo space.
Yeah, really tiny. And it's got like it was meant to have a crane system that went back along the tail and would deliver the cargo down behind. And obviously that's been rejigged now, and you kind of just dump the cargo as you come up in via the ramp. This door here was this just shows you how far things.
I don't recall anything about a crane on this, but
come a separate toilet and shower. There is no ship that has that. They are all shared like that now. So yeah.
Back in the day, the Connie used to have that arrangement. You had the sink in the middle and the shower on one side and the loo on the other. So this was very much like takes a lot of inspiration, I think, from RSI, and yet it was also an Aegis ship. So it was. You could see where the design language problems again were rearing their head.
Yeah.
But my problem with this was the ship was just trying to do too much. I actually think the ship was really essentially supposed to be a dropship, not a gunship. And even as a gunship, it didn't need all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what you said before about people just assume what the size had to be, and they made it bigger and it ballooned. And I think that's not what they were really going for, because again, it was like a small test thing that they wanted people to do, because really the Next Great Star Machine was trying to find artists and stuff like that.
Yeah. And one thing you've got to say about the Redeemer, for all its faults and for all its problems, it really did show the team could manipulate and use the engine that they were using, and they could show how they could put things together and do a whole package. And that, I think, was really the key thing that they were looking for. But it just, for me, it just missed the mark of being that dropship. And to make it a gunship, they actually outgunned it to what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where we can start to move into the fixes now, but also some of the. Actually, there's one more issue I want to go over, and that's the modularity stuff, right? So this was originally a gunship that had dropship elements, as you saw from when we go back to the original Next Great Starship video, right? And now it is a long-range kind of escort type of fighter type of thing with a modular bay at the bottom, where you kind of really don't go down there now because the bottom module, you don't need to be near the beds, you don't need to be near the shower, but they are just the added things it gives you. But if you then swap that bottom area out to be more drop seats, like the original intent, you've then got more people on there. So you can clearly see as soon as you add more people onto this ship, it's going to have extra components and stuff like that for the living. What do you call it? Life support. That's what I was thinking of. Thank you, Agrid. And so that will change it again. But I think we can kind of move from there into what your and Paul's major issues with this ship the first time around. And I still think it's kind of valid, because the actual fix that we kind of had at the time was that really the Redeemer had moved to such a point where it was so different from where it started. It was this overgunned, kind of sluggish, tanky type of ship where its original concept is this highly mobile gunship and dropship, right? They're almost juxtaposed for what they wanted to do. And with the moves and changes of the components now, they are clearly have now drawn the line in the sand and said, no, we're going back to this quick mobile tank but less gunned. So it's got extra shields, extra armor type of thing, and it's highly mobile and hard to hit. So you could still go up against a hammerhead in this thing, but you got to dodge all the bullets. Where before this thing kind of just sat back and shot at the hammerhead and kept its distance. And let's be honest, that's kind of cheesy and not as fun. I do kind of prefer this going back to the original concept.
It's cheesy unless the hammerhead is faster. If the hammerhead can run this thing down, it would be not so cheesy, but you give too much speed to ships and things have problems. I still think it'd be really interesting if big ships in space had faster top end speeds than smaller fighters, but in atmosphere they were slower. Because then the Ares Ion, things like that, they're harder to hit at range, and the hammerhead would be able to try and chase them down, but they would have to warp out and they would slowly run out of quantum fuel. But in atmosphere, the hammerhead would never be able to catch it because it's fat.
And I'd like to put that out to you, Algrid. Now knowing what it turned into and dragging it, well, not dragging it, but turning it back to its original concept. What's your preference between those two, considering we've now had 18 months between the two re-records of this?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things we said that if it was a dropship, you really wanted the turret, the cockpit facing downwards to support the crew, to be able to see where you're going and dropping the crew.
But before you go into that, I want the answer on the old versus new.
Yeah, I think it really needs to be split into two. I can see them moving closer to that, but it doesn't answer the problem. I think even when you look at the original concept, 2 turrets and a remote turret and 2 missile racks is not a gunship. That's less turrets than a 2-man turret is the same as a Connie and a remote turret. That's not really that chunky a gunship if that's all it's doing. But the crew, the dropship ability to drop a squad to be able to do that boarding action of a ship, to do that kind of checking and manifests and that type of stuff, that's, I think, what this ship was aimed for. And if you're going gunship end, it needs more guns based on the original, but then it doesn't need the boarding action. So it really, I think, the problem is it still doesn't answer the question. I think it needs to be 2 different ships.
And I think that, so now we can kind of move on to what you and Paul kind of highlighted a lot. So you said like a drop ship essentially needs to be lower to the ground, and this cockpit's kind of too high up. It needs to be lower. The modular thing that we kind of worked out was instead of having 2 decks, it was 2 modular rooms that were side by side, and you could pick which configuration you wanted. So essentially you could have like a core room, which they both use, but then again allowing them to be on different sides of ships. I guess you could do it top and bottom as well if you really wanted to, but it allowed you to kind of choose where you wanted the layout. It's already got drop seats in it, but they're upstairs, where if you could have had that downstairs and then the module was at the top, that would have given more benefits to that, because it would make more sense to have the kitchen upstairs, wouldn't it?
I don't think it would make more sense to have the kitchen upstairs. If you put the beds and the kitchens and stuff upstairs, there's 2 parts to this. One, it would make potentially using that top turret gun not really, depending, like, they might not have been able to put the turret gun up there. Yeah, you could have a turret in the middle of your kitchen, but that kind of sucks as well. But the other part is that if this ship is meant for people to sleep in it and it's parked on the ground, then your beds are on the top floor, which should be getting hit by all of the gunfire. If they're underneath the ship, then you would have the ability to have a little bit before the ship exploded, or you'd like be able to get out of the bed and get out the back of the ship before the ship exploded. But also when it comes to like modules, it would be better to have the modules on the bottom. So say like you get a medical version, then you could swap out those beds on the bottom rack for medical beds. And you could swap out the food area for some medical supplies, and it becomes a drop ship slash medical retrieval ship. And there's a number of things like that. Like even if you did additional cargo space, you remove the bathroom and all that, you put cargo space in the bottom, then you would have a pretty good cargo ship to like carry stuff around in. Because right now you can already see there's two SCU in one corner. If they got rid of everything out of the bottom of the ship, you're probably looking at 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, like probably 12 to 24 SCU of cargo, if not more, in the bottom, and still being able to get to the ramp, which would be a pretty significant amount of cargo space, but probably not going to happen.
And the beds.
But the drop seats we've got upstairs at the moment are really only for the gunners to be sitting in when they're not sitting in their gun. So they're not. It's not really, even in that sense, it's not being designed at present as a drop ship. It's just really a gunship.
Yeah.
And with the pilots, with the multiple pilot guns, with the heavy turret guns, with its missiles, it is a gunship in its current form.
Yeah.
But I think it misses out on when you compare it to the original design specs, it doesn't.
Well, you also got to look at where the shield generators are. So, like, I know this isn't the same Redeemer, but right now you see these are the shield boosters. Those drop seats are right here behind these. And then your ladder is over here. So, theoretically, if you're going to talk about this a little bit, the shields could be the strongest in this upper section here. And if this is a dropship and gunship, its big vulnerability would probably be, well, one, if someone shoots the tail off, and it crashes, but anyone that's on the ground with like anti-air weaponry could shoot and hit the bottom of this ship. So those beds and stuff down here could be vulnerable to damage from these outside areas. And then if you look at like your pilot and your gunners and stuff like this up here, if a missile or something happened to kill one of those guys, you could have someone, or injure them, have someone else get up and take their role while you're getting into position for the drop. So I could see some utility from it.
It doesn't meet that. And I think the original design specs call for a creation of a new ship.
Yeah. And I think having seen the Redeemer in the state that it was, where it was kind of upgunned and kind of more sluggish, I actually think if you took that and put it onto a different manufacturer, there's still room for that there, right? And we've now got the Corsair, we've now got the Connie, and we've got this that are all gunships. I kind of sit there and go, Anvil's an obvious choice for me. I did actually kind of, after we did the first episode,
I don't feel like they need another ship to take the role. I think right now it's fairly good because right now we have essentially size 4 guns on fighters and anti-air weapons and things like that. And then you have size 4 gimbals on the Redeemer and stuff, which is going to put it more in the power spike, a little bit above a lot of those things. And then the Connie and the Corsair have fixed size 5s, which basically, I mean, it's basically you're going to have more firepower, but you're not going to be able to use it super effectively for like covering an area on the ground. You're going to be able to do strafe runs, shooting the ground in like a line, and then take off. And the Corsair has VTOL, but it also has very vulnerable engines. The Connie has VTOL, but it also has vulnerable VTOL thrusters as well. So that's kind of a big deal. For me personally, I think that the Carrack should get the size 5 turrets that the Redeemer lost. because right now the Carrack used to have size 5 turrets, or at least one. Now it's all size 4. And after flying the Carrack for a while, one of the big issues is that Connies and Corsairs have size 5 guns that outrange the Carrack. So when you're landed on the ground or something, a lot of times you can't fire back and retaliate against them. They'll just poke you to death. They'll follow you around while you're laying on the ground, and they will shoot you with size 5 guns, and your size 4s can't really do anything to them. So, and then also when you look at, like, even now when the Redeemer and stuff gets pushed down to size 4 guns, a Carrack, which has basically twice the required crew, way more vital stuff on board, over twice the size, has pretty much the same firepower as a Redeemer. Because if you're going from a side point of view and you're flying sideways, it has basically 3 size 4s that it's going to be able to put on target. You take the Redeemer, you have 2 size 3s, 2 size 4s, and front-facing size 4s. But flying sideways, you're going to have 2 size 3s and 2 size 4s, which it might be a little bit weaker, but it's still going to be fairly similar. And then you're going to have your 2 size 4 pilot guns in the front. So if you're front-facing, you're going to have 6 size 4 guns, so basically 3 size 4 turrets, and then 1 or 2 of the size 3 turrets that it could be hitting, it's just more power than the Carrack would potentially have. And then it also means that the Carrack, like, can't fight hammerheads because it'll get shredded. It can't fight Connies and Corsairs because they have longer range. It can't fight, any of the bigger ships or really provide any utility in a fleet battle necessarily. But it's okay for fighters and stuff. But I just think the Connie or the Carrack should at least get, I would say, 1 to 2 size 5s, if not 4 size 5s. I would say at least 2 size 5s would be good. And it could replace what the Redeemer was to some degree. And I know that people, like, don't want one ship to be able to do everything, and I can understand that, but on the flip side, it is a military exploration ship that's being sent out into the unknowns of space by itself, finding information and coming back. It probably needs a way to defend itself versus a variety of threats, and size 4 guns are only really good versus fighters right now. Size 5s would at least give it the capability of defending itself for Connies and Corsairs and such. So
episode, I kind of did a really rough sketch and kind of laid this out, and I'll bring it up real quick while you're talking. But it's a really rough sketch. You've seen it, so you know what.
But one of the things in the sketch that X kind of nutted out was trying to he made it a big bottom girl, but he also changed the engine. He kind of gave him more a redeemery look, not a redeemery, but a reclaimery look, so chunky. And I think in your design you kind of pushed that gunship motive a lot more.
Yeah,
because you had you had more turrets. Whereas I think if you go in the dropship version, you actually want less turrets.
I had one. I kind of made one of them like a remote turret, and then 2. Oh, here, look, I'll show you when I get it open. I got a snippet though because I didn't plan for this, as damn usual. But yeah, so I've got it in Photoshop here. It is literally very stick figurey because I actually did it on a really big panel, and then I opened it all out that way. I'm just trying to remember how to open this. File, save. I'll just edit this bit out, Agrid. It's not gonna let me. Yeah, so right, yeah, so this is kind of what I came up with. It's really rough.
Dude, people online talked crap about my stick figures that I made in word art, and I color coded them and stuff. So this is kind of interesting for me to see someone else's stick figure drawing. I kind of, like right now, it looks like front, back, this kind of looks like a cutlass, turret, turret, turret. I don't know why these are double turrets, and then a single turret, or if this is an engine. Turret, turret, turret. Crab legs.
As you can see,
Yep.
but you can kind of see in it, it's got Carrick aesthetics, it's got Pisces aesthetics. I kind of really went into the anvil type of thing.
Carrick and Pisces aesthetics. I mean, it has these pointy bits and these rectangular weird bits, but the circular bit, I don't know what that would be. Carrick or PCs wise. The cockpit is more PCs I could see, but the shape just looks like cutlass to me. Like this is the front of a cutlass. This is the cutlass turret. And then instead of having the back VTOL thrusters, you have whatever these are. And this kind of looks like a cutlass as well. You just cut this part off and you have a ramp. But I don't know how this translates into this at the moment. Like I see turret, 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 but these turrets are in a different spot than these. So like if these were higher up, I guess. But then what's all these gaps? Like this is the body. Why are these big wings? Like I'm guessing it's saying that this part is sticking way farther out than the back part. So you have the body, two back engines, and then two big ass wings coming off the side. And I'm not sure exactly what this is. This is his doodle for some sort of ship. I guess he's saying something that is a ship that would replace what the Redeemer was. Fox, if you're in here. I think personally that the Carrick should get the size 5 guns back and it could replace what the Redeemer was. It's twice the size of the Redeemer. It is meant to be on its own for extended periods, and right now the size 4 turrets aren't good enough to protect it. Because I've been flying the Carrick the last few weeks, and a big problem right now. Yeah, the Carrick originally had size 5 guns. It had a size 5 upper turret remote, and then at some point they swapped it to where it had size 5 side turrets, but now it's all size 4. But the problem is if you're landed on the ground or anything like that, Connies and Corsairs can pick at you at a distance and you can't fight back in the Carrick anymore because your size 4 guns just aren't good enough. But if they gave it size 5s again, it would actually be useful in a lot more things just in the universe in general. I don't think people want the ship to be able to do everything, but it kind of needs to.
It's a bit bigger, probably more wider. But yeah, I ended up putting the turrets on the left and right of the ship. And in that middle section.
But the other thing with that is they don't want ships like the Redeemer to be able to kill like hammerheads, because if you have longer range, you can poke it down. And I kind of think, honestly, if you're in space and you have a big ship, you should be able to fly faster than a fighter. Maybe it takes you longer to speed up, but you should be able to like chase down a fighter. And then if you're in atmosphere, the fighters should be able to chase down the heavier ships. Because then things like the Connie and the Corsair and the Redeemer, the Hammerhead would be able to chase them down in open space and make them jump out, and they would run out of fuel eventually. but I don't know exactly what balance that would have on combat.
And there it had 2 decks that you could customize. So you could basically go up or below, and the whole ship is 2 decks. And you can kind of see the pilot seats there is a little bit character inspired. So you've kind of got a guy on the top deck and a guy on the bottom deck. Rather than having the 3 seats on the bottom, you've just got like one pilot and one crew member above him and stuff like that. Same number of people, just essentially rejigging what was already there. But yeah, I don't know. I know you.
But again, you can also.
Well, Master Mode slows everything down. I don't know if that brings it back to what it was before Master Modes, because before Master Modes you had jousting in space. Yeah. Like, I can understand that you don't want the character to be able to outrun all of its threats, but it kind of makes sense that it would be able to. Like, if a fighter, if a group of fighters are going to be chasing a Carrack, then you have to know where the Carrack is, set up your plan of attack, and then go in with the group and hit it all at once. But in the future, fighters aren't going to be like following Carracks around in space. They're going to have to be on a carrier. I don't know if that's like logically, if we think about it, if you're in space, yeah, I mean, the armor is going to be a part of it, but I'm just saying, I don't particularly care either way how the flight system was. It's just as long as the carrier can get some size 5 guns again, I'm good. Well, mass is a thing in space, but I'm saying, like, if you have a hammerhead or whatever, it weighs a lot. The startup thrust, it might be slower, but it has way bigger engines. So, like, in space, if it can fly faster than a fighter could, it could close the gap. So, like, the Ares Ions and stuff with size 7 guns wouldn't be able to shoot it down at range. The smaller ships would have an advantage at range while they're fighting and dodging the bullets, but then the Hammerhead would get more of an advantage as it closed the gap. And since quantum jumping is still a thing in the game, and they're eventually wanting to add quantum skipping to where you can just quantum in any direction, then those ships would have to quantum away. And since they have a lower fuel capacity, they're going to have to refill. And fighters and stuff don't need to chase down Carracks and things. They need to, they're going to be on carriers. So if you want to chase somebody down, all you have to do is like load your fighters up on an Idris, chase the other ship down in the Idris, and then release the fighters. Or if it's like a Carrack and it's on a planetary surface, you could send your fighters in and they would be faster on the planet until the Carrack can make it back into space. So you'd have a window of opportunity to fight and destroy the ship with your fighters, but they would have a way to escape and fly off. I think we put too much emphasis on fighters in general in the game. Like, you're not going to have a solo fighter chase down and destroy fleets of ships. Like, the Carrack is going to be exploring planets and flying around for ages. The fighter just doesn't have the fuel capacity.
See that you took away the scissors, the nutcrackers, because.
Well, before master modes, everything was fast, though. Well, fighters can still kill hammerheads right now. The armor system's going to change some of that. But before master modes, you had ships like fighters were jousting each other because they were all super fast. Turret gunners were having problems because everything was super fast. big ships could run away from each other, but you could still have like quantum jumping and quantum skipping is going to already have some of that in the game anyway when it comes out. And then in atmosphere, you're going to have atmospheric flight, engineering, all this extra stuff. So like if a fighter gets the advantage on a bigger ship in atmosphere and it gets damaged, it could potentially get stuck there and crash, you know. There's benefits to this. I like the idea of fighters and stuff having advantages on planetary surfaces, bigger ships having advantages in space. Um, and then you have like heavy fighters and stuff. So like Anvil Hornets and things have heavier armor, so they'd be more resistant to like light fighter damage in space. And since they're in space, their weight isn't really that big of an issue. But on a planetary surface, they would weigh a lot more than, say, like an arrow. So if they ever had any malfunctions or anything, they're going to have a more likely chance of crashing on the surface than an arrow would potentially, you know, because it just weighs so much. I don't think it would be exactly like pre-master modes because you keep the same speeds that we have now, but just make it to where the bigger ships can accelerate a little bit more to chase them down and kind of like scare things off. Because the Ares Ion's going to be a big issue for like hammerheads. The size 7 guns have a longer firing range. They're small enough to dodge a lot of bullets. And if you can't close the gap, they're just going to pick at you until you slowly blow up.
They don't really fit with the aesthetic of the game. They're a great idea. Don't get me wrong. I love the look. I love the aesthetic, but it's not Star Citizen.
But it has some differences as well. Like I essentially took the back legs of the Carrack and made them wider, so it's kind of got this aggressive kind of bat stance, which is kind of, you know, why. Well, I called this the Reaper. I called it the Anvil Reaper, right? So it's just my idea. I don't expect them to copy this in any way, shape, or form. Like, I fully expect them to make a completely different ships. But all I'm trying to show here is that there are other.
My understanding is that the Ares Ion and the Inferno, if I'm recalling this correctly, the Ion's basically made to drop shields, and the Inferno is more to like damage a component, but it's not really. It's like a crippling ship more than like a destroying ship. But I think there's still ways that you could balance the Inferno out and in the Ion, because if you're looking at like a size 7 gun on a fighter platform, there could be any number of like, let's say like degradation of items and components from the recoil and stuff, overloading your power plant because you're shooting your laser gun too much. Like there could be a negative for having such a big weapon on a small ship.
Ships that could do.
Well, I haven't got to play through 24.2 yet, so
that's all I'm trying to show there. So yeah. Right, I think
we'll
that's kind of.
I know armor's
so
coming.
I think the kind of the fix is that I want another gunship, and I think you and Paul were essentially saying the same thing.
Yeah, we either need the gunship version because like you look at those specs and you tell me, do two man turrets and a remote turret, is that a gunship to you?
Yeah.
You know, like, and you can see it clearly didn't meet that because when they put the ship into game, they actually upgunned it. Before it was even put in the game, it was upgunned to make it a gunship.
I do still think that the ship that I think that may contend with this closest to what you and I have kind of probably looked at may actually end up being the Marky Mark when that eventually drops. You know, with the 2 turrets, the bounty hunting stuff. Because that's the other thing. One of the modules for this was just a cargo thing along the bottom. And again, once you have the cargo, you can put bounty hunting modules in there. That is one of the things that this ship is going to be really good at when it's done.
The one of the things as we were talking about the way the cargo used to be in the tail.
Yeah.
And it was basically
I would say like the one thing is if the bigger ships were faster, then you'd probably have bigger ships interrupting people's dogfights. Because if you have two groups of fighters fighting each other, then you just have like a Carrack or something fly up in the middle of that fight and help the one side win. So I don't know if they want to isolate dogfights or not, but
basically 2 SCU cargo base. That's basically the space for one person to be lying down in a cryo bed.
Yeah.
And so it almost did have that bounty huntery feel to it.
I've heard some crazy ideas for modules this thing over the years. Like I've heard ones like where the whole floor is kind of cut out on the bottom part, and you could literally have like a tractor beam that pulls up a cyclone into it, and so basically you come down from the drop seats at
yeah, but it's I'm fine with the armor system and the thing being slow, but I don't necessarily think it's because you're looking at like two sides of a coin here. Because you're saying it'll be a problem because it's fast and has large guns, so it can kill the small fighters quickly. In space, that would be a problem. But in space, if you're in a fleet battle, a ship like the Carrack would be weaker to other big ships, which makes it more like a chessboard. And then on the planetary surface with atmospheric flight and everything else, if the system I was talking about was in the game, the Carrack would be slower on the planetary surface, and the fighters would be able to chase it down on planets. So you have two different battle arenas here with two different strategies. And fighters won't be by themselves in the grand scheme of things. They're going to have carriers. So right now, like when a Carrack goes and fights a group of fighters, it isn't just going to be a group of fighters. You have an Idris, the Kraken, the Javelin, the Liberator, the I guess the Connies. You have the Ironclad potentially. You go down to the planet to explore, man. But the Carrack also has the Pisces. It gives more use to the Pisces. If you can park your Carrack outside, you send the Pisces down to the planet, scout around, and then you bring your Carrack down, when you need it. But the Carrack is like a small little base. That's the point of sending it down. Because for me in my fleet, the Carrack is it's a multi-role like military vessel in the sense that when those cargo pods work, I'm gonna be sticking like 8 medical Ursas in that thing, and then you can potentially drop like 20 to 30 people down for a ground assault with medical Ursas, and then you can pick people up in the medical Ursas and bring them back to medical ships. But if you like the video that we did the other day with the Pioneer, they talk about exploration ships, and basically if you're exploring a planet, exploration ships are going to be able to find mineral rich areas and stuff and sell the information. So there's reason for exploration ships to be around on the surface. Yeah, you wouldn't want to risk it, but Yeah, but that's your choice. If you want to keep it in space, you keep it in space. You have the Pisces to do that. But you have to, like, the thing is that, like, think about it like if you're a new player. All right, we have planets and we have moons. New players don't have access to big ships. They don't have the ability to crew an Idris or anything like that. They're going to have fighters. They're going to have ground vehicles. They might have a Connie or something at some point. And if big ships can just fly down to a planet's surface and abuse them without any recourse, then they're never going to be able to get their feet off the ground. So if there's not some punishment, and the Carrack, I'm not saying necessarily that the Carrack would be super slow in atmosphere. The Carrack is like one of the lighter armored, bigger, large ships. Like it has armor, but it's not like a Perseus. It's not like an Idris in armor. It's just there's only a few like really big ships that are like combat capable that can kind of go down to planetary surfaces. And when I'm looking at the Carrack, I'm looking more like other expedition like ships. Like what's your competition when you're going to go explore? And you got the Corsair, you got the Connie, you got uh what is it, the 100 the 600i or whatever. I think has an expeditionary version. Um
At the top, and you basically
Odyssey, yeah. Um I'm still split with the Odyssey. I think for me, like the Odyssey is gonna be the ship that I earn in game for myself, just to like fly around. But I don't think it's gonna be as flexible. Like how to explain? The Odyssey to me is like you ever watch like Aliens, like Prometheus and stuff. It's like the colony ship that goes way far out into the distance, but then gets fucked up and people have to come over there and find it. That's what I kind of see it as, because like you're looking at a big ship that it looks like it would possibly be able to recycle its own air, recycle its water, produce its own food maybe. Has the exploration ship like potentially in its bay. It has like 3 size 5 guns, which is another reason I think that the Carrack should have some size 5 guns. I mean, it only refines fuel for itself though. Like you could map out ore and sell the location to people, I guess, yeah. And that's fine. My thing with the Orion, or not the Orion, the Odyssey, the reason I'm not fully on board with the Odyssey is because I don't really think that it's not going to be like a ship that you want to take into a fight, I don't think, really, which it doesn't really have to, but in my head it's good for like small groups of people that want to explore and stuff for long, or just like casually drive around. But if anything ever goes wrong, yeah, it has capital shields, but um, like like think of it like this. All right, you have it has 3 size 5 turrets like on the concept right now. which that's why I kind of wish that the Carrack had some size 5s as well. The capital shields, then it has the refinery, then it has the remining laser, then it has whatever's powering the hydroponics and stuff in that thing. Then it's already a big ship in general as well. So you got all like the rooms and the life support systems and everything else. So if you're mining fuel with that and refining it at the same time, like how much power is that taking from your shields? How much juice are you using? How much wear and tear on the ships? And then let's just say you're under attack, or if you have an accident and that refinery like explodes because someone messed up, that's where you run into problems. If that ship, like let's say like a ship comes by and it crashes into your mining head and it's damaged, then you're going to have to go all the way back to port to repair something. So I don't think it's a ship that you want to take into a fight. It's something that you want to like avoid damage at all and then just go around and do what you got to do. You're not always mining, but for instance, I know that these are old specs. Hold on, let me look. These are like the Odyssey hasn't been came out yet, so right now this can change. Carrack fuel capacity hydrogen 15 million liters. Quantum capacity 44 thousand liters. Wait, this is the wrong page. Hold on. It might be the website. I don't remember what I was looking at before. All right, I don't remember exactly what I was looking at before the last time I was looking at this, but Odyssey, one size 3 fuel tank, and then one size 3 or doesn't even have the quantum thing on here. Yeah, it can defend itself. I'm not saying that it can't defend itself. I think that'll be fine. And then if a Terrabin fits in the back of it, that would also be good. But I remember whatever I was looking at last time, basically right now in the specs until the Odyssey comes out, the Carrack had like twice as much fuel capacity as the Odyssey. And then the Carrack also specifically has I don't know where it says it, but if you, or the brochure, if you like in the brochures and stuff, the Carrack specifically has um uh reinforced fuel tanks. So every ship has physicalized components for the things that happen. So you have areas that store fuel, things that are going to be going through certain places. That's what I'm saying. You're saying that you don't have to mine that much, but I'm saying that the Carrack right now is slated to have twice as much fuel capacity, but the Odyssey could potentially grow to bigger than the Carrack because when it's made because it's just a big ship. But right now the Carrack has twice as much and it has reinforced fuel tanks, which means that you would have to mine to get to a similar distance than the Carrack. We also don't know how much fuel you're going to be able to make when you mine certain rocks? Like, is it just going to be like one asteroid and you refuel your quantum fuel tank? Or do you have to have a whole bunch of asteroids? Like, how much fuel are you going to be burning looking for the other fuel that you're going to be making? So there's a number of things to think about with this. But also, this ship, we know that it has a bunch of internal space, but we don't know where the fuel tanks are. But some ships, the fuel is actually in the engine areas where these things are. And when it comes to like external damage, the Carrack's engines are internal. The Carrack's only outside parts. Um, where's the part list? Whole. It's been a while since I used these. I could have swore there was a part list on here. Vehicle parts, yep. So the Carrack doesn't have that many parts. The front is eventually going to have a reinforced like shield to go over it. The cargo pods are just those bottom pods, and then you have left and right wing, and then the rear and middle. And the rear is where the engines are. The engines are internal to the ship, and then the left and right wing is just the side turrets, basically. It doesn't have the information here, but when the damage systems and stuff come in, like these engines could potentially break off. They could potentially cause fuel leaks depending on how the systems come in. So there's just a number of things, but I do think it's a good ship. Yeah, but so you're gonna put a terrapin in it? Well, the Carrack's engines are internal. I'm saying like the Carrack is gonna have problems. Don't get me wrong. I don't think the Carrack's gonna be the best ship in the universe, but these engines in the Carrack are inside the middle section. Yeah, they're exposed on the back, but like the engine itself is inside the ship. See, this is the rear. You can hit this. This is a big target. But these engines are inside of this and inside the middle section here. I mean, so these are the engines. These aren't just thrusters. The engineering bay is right here in the back. You can see these engines in there. So where's the engines for the Odyssey at? Let me see if I can find. Looks like, I don't know if this is the refinery or not. I might have to watch the actual video. Yeah, but the engines, like, I don't think you're getting what I'm... It's not about, like, the thing that I'm saying isn't about the engines taking damage. The Carrick's engines can take damage. I'm talking about, like, you fly the Cutlass. You fly the Cutlass at all? Oh, I'm not talking, like, I'm not talking anything about engines or thrusters. I'm just talking about where they're at, the part on the outside. So I don't have them. It doesn't matter in my example if I have them mixed up or not, because to me, like, an engine, like, all I really know at the moment is that the Carrick's thrusters on the back are connected to the engine room, and the engines are back there. But what I'm talking about is, like, on the Odyssey, but we don't know if these parts can break off. That's the big thing that I'm, like, these back ones probably won't, but, like, these front ones, you don't know if these are actual physical parts. But that's what I'm saying is, like, if this, but, like, if this ends up being a breakable part, you could potentially lose an engine that you wouldn't be able to fix. If this mining laser breaks off, you could lose that part. If that refinery blows up, you could lose that part. The Carrick stuff, these can get damaged, but they would have to blow off this whole back section of the ship. They would have to rip the complete rear of the Carrick off to get those engines out. What do you mean, no? Yeah, yes, you take out the thrusters break, it doesn't move. I got you on that. All right, we're good. But the thruster is still attached to the ship. So, like the Cutlass, for example, those two big engines are weak spots. And people can shoot the engine off and the engine is gone. You can't fix it anymore. It's gone. It's off the ship. Maybe in the future you could go and find it, drag it back, and try to, like, weld it back on. But these are built into the ship. So the only way to get these things out of here is to like rip the back of the ship off. So if people can repair them, even if they get damaged or destroyed, you could just EVA out here, start repairing, or work on them on the inside and get them fixed back up and then fly again. Now, if these wings and stuff on the Odyssey end up breaking off, then that's a problem. And if these are connected to the fuel tanks at all and cause like a fuel leak, that's also a problem. I mean, blowing off a thruster, I don't know, because it seems to me like if you lose a big part of your ship, you're going to need something like a crucible to completely rebuild that part and stick it back on. If the part is in the ship and it's just destroyed a bit, it seems like you'd be able to repair it to like a semi-functional state. Because I know like the Carrack, these two turret areas here get blown off. And then you'd have to go and get like an actual repair ship to rebuild this whole section. Oh, that looks kind of nice. See, that's the refinery room. See, dry dock.
The Explorer Blazer, usually up to 2,000 more as an X computers. Moreover, the Odyssey carries an onboard hangar, said to be able to carry ships the size.
It's not that one.
Your contractors will soon be asking for their 1099. Don't keep them waiting.
Hello, fellows.
I took two things that I love, dancing and dogs, and I made them into a successful business.
Crew explorer ship for those who crave the refinery and a size 2 mining laser, the same that's on the Mill Explorer. It's a matter is or can be available, and your EVA is all of the 52 SCU to the Carrack's 456. But this, of course, is dependent on.
Automating your contracts and payment processing for your firm is one of the best.
I mean, that's fine. I can share you a Discord thing and you can just talk to me.
I like to start with automation.
But... This is a video where the guy puts stuff together in a different game.
We have this one room which is kind of really in there just as like the rule of cool. You can just sort of sit there and just see, because mainly some engineering space.
Variety of missiles to use.
On the interior, we've split it over 3 levels in total. Top deck is mainly some engineering space and
top deck is, well, that guy's like taking the specs online and building them to like kind of try and show it. Top deck is engineering space. Yeah. But they said this is on the top deck, so I'm guessing there's engines on both sides. And then the thrusters will be outside of here, potentially. Yeah. But the thing is, if you can't get to those thrusters, if they can break off at all, then there's problems. I mean, this
refinery.
So you can mine quantanium and refine it for the ship itself. So that essentially gives you the ability to just generate your own quantum and hydrogen fuel.
Obviously, Star Citizen is getting bigger.
He just said that it can generate quantum and hydrogen fuel. Something I haven't really thought about. How do you make hydrogen fuel out of rock? Because they're saying the Starfarer can't. Like, I get that it's supposed to do both, but... Oh, because it has fuel intakes. Yeah, I got you.
Bigger and bigger and bigger. We're introducing more systems. Fuel is going to become a major issue, right? And so this is perfect for that kind of scenario. The middle deck is the sort of probably the most dominant of the three.
You have a bridge at the front of the ship, and it's quite a nice bridge on the Odyssey because you have this huge bank of
They got a lot of fucking people on this bridge.
Stations for all the crew to sit there all in one place.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Every crew member has their own room with ensuite facilities on board.
See, I'm already starting to question, like, because the video that we did over the Pioneer the other day made it kind of seem like, I don't know if you require a Pioneer to build refineries or mining things on a planet, or if it's just like the outpost to live there. But if you can build refineries and medical stations and stuff on a planetary surface, it almost seems like the Pioneer would just be better than having a lot of these other ships, except for it would cost a lot of resources.
Or
Wait, how many days do we got till CitizenCon? Is it already happening? 24 CitizenCon. I know there was like a week, last week left. Yeah, but see, 3 days. I'll be at work, maybe. But yeah, like the well, they have on the CitizenCon from last year. They show mining and refining in a one section right there. But the when they talk about it, it's confusing because on the Pioneer like Q&A and in the Pioneer description, and then you have the panel from CitizenCon, they have like different descriptions, because part of them are saying that the Pioneer only builds the outpost, and then you have to buy add-ons, and then but the panel from CitizenCon last year, I think they said you basically get the materials for the outpost and you buy the add-ons and stuff with it, and then it puts them all together into one outpost. But it doesn't really, like, I'm guessing you can build multiple outposts, but I don't know how much material it's going to cost to do that, because if you're trying to live on a surface, you're going to need hydroponics and stuff to make food and water. You're going to need the mining stuff to build materials and things. And then we don't know if you're going to be able, like, if you set up a mining outpost, can you get all of the materials that you need to continue building on the planet, or are you going to have prospectors and moles and stuff mining things and refining them and then refilling the ship? Because if you can just build the ground base and then mine all your materials that you need to keep building more ground bases, that seems way better to me. Yeah, I mean, I still look at old documents to try and understand people's mindsets when they build things, but yeah, I get that. That's partly what I want though right now. Like the org that I'm building is going to be based around planetary stuff, essentially exploration and like planetary combat and stuff basically. But it's also because like a base on the planet is persistent, but it means that, anyone that logs on would be able to use it, which is kind of interesting. But I like the idea of basically there's a lot of things that people don't do in the game right now because they've already bought their ships with cash. And so you don't really have groups organizing the way that they probably normally would. And when the game comes out, you're still going to have people that just hop on the biggest ships and earn money. But I like working from the ground up to make like a full org system. Yeah, so you mine in ships, but you also have all that potential that's on the ground. That's part of the reason I swapped my focus to the ground. See, I like this.
And then
I still wonder what's going to fit in here, because that's a saber. Some people said that the Terrapin would fit in here. I think the Terrapin would be a good option for this ship to like increase the scouting ranges of it, and it's pretty tanky, so it's probably going to be, not more likely to get destroyed. But if you could fit a Vulture in here, but so ground mining, the thought process that I'm having with the ground mining stuff is my org isn't focusing on mining ships because the fleet is based around like troop transport, vehicle transport, and stuff. If you're going to bring a mining operation with you, you're going to have a whole lot more ships and people to fly everything, get it in position. Whereas I could just have a Pioneer or something build a ground mining operation and then have like my Kraken and stuff sitting, doing overwatch, exploring around the system, You know?
To the hangar, which is basically what the whole ship is formed around, essentially. So that really did dictate the dimensions and the proportions of the ship.
It's a generic hangar. It's designed to our environmental hangar metrics, so there's a huge range of ships that can fit in there. You could bring.
Honestly, my first thought
Bring a fighter ship
when people were talking about this ship is so you say you can fit 2 terrapins. My thought process was run this just like I would an Anvil Carrack. I would put like 4+ Pisces in here, and then just like, I don't know, like 6 Ursa or something, 6 or 7 Ursa in here.
Prospect if you want to do even more mining. The hangar on there is a.
Well, I'm not, like, I get that you say that like you have the people for it. I get that, but like I'm saying that you need more people to do that. You need more people and more ships. So like if I have a Carrack, a Liberator, a Kraken, a Perseus, a Polaris, a Starfarer, and all of that, and I have like 50 people flying those ships. I would need more people to fly all of the mining ships and stuff with them. I'd need more logistics to take care of them all, you know? But if I build a mining outpost on the ground, anybody can mine with the ground thing, and it'll be there for them.
A huge volume helps support any choice you want to make with ships.
But I like the idea of exploration a lot.
Medical bay in there for any accidents that happen along the way.
I'm thinking those are recovery beds. Just like the Carrack. But they have a terminal right here.
We have this one room which is kind of really in there just as like the rule of cool. You can just sort of sit there and just see space, you know, as you're zooming along.
The natural competitor to the Odyssey is the Carrack.
In my mind, it's a Carrack killer.
You have like the 2 types of like you have space exploration and then like planetary exploration, because during the Pioneer panel and stuff, they talk about exploration on planets, and they're saying like the Terrapin, the 350p or whatever, the Carrack, they're able to fly around on a planetary surface and find like the cave systems, the land resources, and do like scanning and sampling to see what materials are there, you know. And they're probably going to be useful for like finding things in space, I'm sure, as well, but
what you can do with it is pretty impressive.
Being able to find those ground things
of the spaceship world.
It just gives you almost ultimate flexibility on how you want to play.
I hope they add more creatures and stuff to the game, because like honestly, the creatures and the planetary like survival is kind of what I'm more interested in. Like in this game, I never feel as good as when I do when like I lose a ship fight and my ship crashes to a planet surface and survives, and like I can live out of the ship and like explore and stuff for a while. So like it'd be really cool if you had like basic survival, like base building and hut building and stuff, and being able to like travel on a planet and slowly fix your ship back up and fighting creatures and shit. But I don't know how crazy they're gonna go into it, like the alien xenomorphs and stuff.
The ultimate exploration.
Yeah, the Reliance, that little news van ship.
Odyssey is the first offering from the storied manufacturer in quite some time, and they seem intent on bursting back into the scene with a massive impact that is sure to make Carrack owners look twice. And while that wraps up our multi-week...
Massive impact, sure to make Carrick owners look twice. Similar crews. I still think the Carrick is just more flexible at the moment. I just wish the Carrick had bigger guns.
coverage of the new ships and vehicles of this year's Intergalactic Aerospace Expo, let's go ahead and take a look into the future with a special vehicle-themed sprint report. To get things started, members of the EU Vehicle Content Team have returned their attentions to the Hull A and Hull C as they continue refining the work previously done in order to bring it up to current standards and, perhaps most importantly, metrics.
What the hell's that?
And for ships just beginning their journey, we can announce that the Scorpius fighter from RSI has begun its journey through white box phase, where the team works to ensure all current metrics are met and that all the component spaces work as we'd like them to.
Oh, is that the Banu?
Nice. That's a turret, not an ED-209. Ooh, and some video.
I don't even remember this video. More flexible for me, like in my game plan. It's so here's the gist of everything I'm looking at with the Carrick. Well, I know that it won't be out for a long time. The team that was building it also is gone. But I don't remember seeing this video when it came out. The Carrick though is more flexible to me because as an exploration ship, being able to find and map the jump points, I feel like is going to be pretty useful. Being able to act as like a medical ship to some degree, because if you have 8 medical Ursas in there, medical Pisces, and a tier 2 bed, you basically have, 10 medical beds. And when it comes to medical ships, pretty much none of them have the capability of mapping jump points. So if you needed to go and rescue people on the other side of an unknown jump point, Carrick is the only thing that I would really trust for that. And then the troop drop capabilities. So when it comes to like planetary assault or exploration and stuff, being able to land on the ground and drop off 8 medical Ursas or whatever into a battlefield is kind of a big deal. Well, the Carrick will be able to do it without putting itself at risk, Like if you go with another ship and you go into the jump point and you crash into the side and you damage yourself and get stuck over in the other area of space, the Carrick is going to be that ship that's like, oh shit, let's go find that guy. And then they send the drones out. The drones map the jump point for you, and then you go through it. And then as a fleet, if I'm bringing, because they changed the system. Originally, I wasn't going to buy any capital ships at all. And then they started talking about how capital ships might be able to go through all the same jump points as other ships. And that changed pretty much everything for me, because my original game plan was only going to be to have like Liberators and Carracks and stuff. But if you have a fleet, do you want to risk your whole fleet based on their flight skill through their jump point, or do you actually want to have the best chance? Like, I don't want to risk my Kraken crashing in a jump point if I can have a Carrick map it out beforehand. I mean, they're like, I've seen a lot, pretty much most of the videos and stuff of CIG over the years. Some of it's rusty, but the original drones in the Carrack were supposed to be jump point, like scouting drones or whatever, but well, you don't really have to know the range of the drones. You just need to know what their purpose is. Like, even if the drone's range is really small, being able to send them in there would be a benefit. Or even if they were just like one-use drones that you shot across the universe and they like pinged and brought information back to you, they would still be useful. So I mean even the Reclaimer has drones, but like the Reclaimer's drone stuff says that it's basically meant for finding wreckage. It's for finding like ships and stuff with the Reclaimer, from what I recall. But that has a lot more utility than you would think it would, because if a Reclaimer's drones can find wreckage, they could potentially find other people's ships. You know, it's like the Reclaimer doesn't necessarily need to be in my fleet, but I like salvage a little bit, and it has utility because if you disable somebody's ship or something, the Reclaimer could just start crunching it. It's like a bargaining tool, but it could also provide you like supplies.
Yes, sometimes I'm a jerk, but I'm your jerk. Now don't forget that our big IAE about this revamped.
The hell? Raftron, Defender of the Persistent Universe. This kind of looks like a joke in general, but also this kind of looks like robotic limbs. If that was an in-game helmet, I could see a lot of people wearing it, but I also don't like MMOs that have a bunch of dumb shit in it all the time. It's a cool helmet though. I mean, they're not specifically talked about a lot, but there is a lot over the years about them. Well, I mean, the main debate right now is when people talk about swapping drones into different ships. Like the Reclaimer was supposed to have, the salvage drones, and the Carrack was supposed to have like the exploration drones or whatever. And then like at some point somebody asked the question if you would be able to swap the drones out on ships, and then that kind of became like a maybe. So then people started speculating like, well, the Carrack might be able to put repair drones and stuff in its bay and do repairs on itself. And then everything got out of hand after that. Because if you can start putting multiple ships, like they started saying like salvage drones in the Vulcan, and basically CIG was like, yeah, it's possible, but the Vulcan isn't made for salvage. So it's like there's a lot of weird stuff with drones in general, and like the grabby hand thing that they tried to do for a long time.
Soon, though. Sometimes we like.
3 days. But yeah, I think the Odyssey has more, like, the Odyssey's going to have the ability to stay out longer than the Carrack, as long as nothing gets blown up on it. And the Carrack is just going to have a lot more flexibility for, like, military stuff. It's kind of how I look at it. But I don't know how the base building's going to work. Because if you need a pioneer to build like a mining facility, and it's like, I get an outpost is going to have life support and stuff, so you could stay in an outpost and have air and all that. Like that's fine. But if I can just use one of those base building ground vehicles and build a mining station, and I can just live out of my Kraken, then I don't really need an outpost. Yeah, but it's not as big of a deal now because they messed up size 3 components. Because used to, size 3 components were going to be able to be replaced, and then that means the Carrack would have been able to set out and just replace its components and stay out in the field longer if it got damaged. Now they're saying, you know, you can repair the size 3 components, but it's never going to be like back to full. You can't swap them out anymore. But the Odyssey would have to go all the way back to a shipyard, because it's capital components you have to go to shipyards to repair. So, like right now, there's only one shipyard. It's at Crusader. We don't know if Pyro has a shipyard. I'm assuming it's probably going to have at least one somewhere, though, for pirates. You know, like how many shipyards are there going to be in the universe? You're going to have to fly way farther. But like better job, I don't like. It's not that it's going to do a better job. I'm saying like it's more like they have different roles. The Odyssey in my mind is the casual small group of players doing, you know, exploration, finding stuff, going back home. They don't really care about combat and all that. The Carrack in my mind is, we need this ship to do a bunch of roles in a military like organization. Or you can kind of do some like solo Vanduul space, like go into hostile territory exploration. Yeah. But let's say if the Odyssey does take damage and you were able to repair the capital components with whatever system they put in, because I would think that like the Crucible would be able to get a capital ship up and running again, but eventually you're going to have a lot of issues with your components and they're going to have to be replaced. But if the Odyssey took damage and you had to repair its capital components, eventually things are going to start malfunctioning. You still have to run your mining laser, you still have to run your refinery, you know, your shields are already damaged and stuff. Your power plant isn't working as well, and you only have one power plant in there. The Carrack is getting changed to 2 power plants, 2 size 3s, which gives you some redundancy. It's but like even this, like the Ironclad that people talk about, it has the thrusters on the back, but they're not fully inside the ship. Like these aren't super protected in the back. It doesn't seem like. They probably won't break off. I would assume they probably wouldn't. But with this ship, it's this command module. There's two things, like the two things with the Ironclad. The command module detaches. It's also not super armored. So if someone blows this up, you lose your pilot seat. And as far as I know, I don't think they said that. I mean, they haven't changed it yet, or they talked about it being able to pilot this from the bridge here. But if they don't change that, then this is a big, big weak spot for this ship. And then people saying they want to use it for ground assaults. I think that this is more of like a land on the ground and be a base thing, because if you pour vehicles out the front of this and somebody destroys one, it'll block up this doorway. But everyone wants to try and use it as a carrier, and I don't really see it as a carrier. It's like, you don't know if the vehicle repair works on ships or not yet, but yeah, but they talked about being able to potentially control it from the bridge. They were deciding on it because they said something about you'd be able to turn on the thrusters or engines from here and make it go in a straight line, but you need the command module to turn it and stuff. But then they started talking about potentially being able to swap pilot control from here to here, but they weren't sure about it. If everything stays the same, this module is the weak spot. You'd basically blow the module off, this would lose power, and then you would attach onto the docking port that's here, and then go right into the bridge. I don't know exactly where I saw it, man. I've watched a million things. All I know is that I generally don't make stuff up. So, I mean, I could try and find it. I'm sure it was probably somewhere, but start with the Q&A. All I know is that when this ship was coming out, I was watching pretty much everything that everyone said about it, and so it came somewhere from up there. But I don't know if it was from a content creator or not right now, but I don't just trust content creators. That's not generally what I do. But um okay, so this one is all about the command module being the sole thing. But as far as I know, like, if it doesn't change, because anything can change in the game, but if it doesn't change, the command module's the weak spot on the ship. 100%. But it'll take me a while to find it. There's so much crap over. I really don't care enough about the ship, to be honest. I mean, every ship has a weak spot. Because I actually thought about making a series about, like, ways to defeat certain ships, like theoretical ways. Because, like, if you look at it, like, this is an armored box. So, like, on the ground, you're only going to have this way to get in. That's why I think this is like a ground-based sort of, like, you can load your vehicles on and off, repair them in here. but it's like a castle. If someone tries to attack you, you just shut the front ramp and you're good. But there's a docking port for this to attach on here. So you have the upper door area, the lower door, and then this docking port. But the difference is the docking port goes straight into where that bridge is. And if you control the bridge, I'm assuming you can probably open these doors. It's the same thing with like the Banu Merchantman. I speculated that it would have a lot of weak spots with its internal stored guns. Like it has a bonus because the guns are stored internally. So if someone attacks you, they can't just take your guns out instantaneously. But it's also a weakness because when those external guns are brought out, they open up these holes in the ship, and we don't know where the holes go. So like the Banu Merchantman has two size 8s. It has like these two size 8 guns right here that'll get deployed from the side of the ship. And I'm guessing there's probably no way to get into the ship from here. So it's probably not that big of an issue. But this top turret is the weak spot. Because this turret, when it's deployed, this big dome comes down, it opens, and then this pops out, and it hovers in the air. So if you have like Furies or anything that's small enough, you could potentially just fly the Fury down in here, and you'd be right at the bridge. So you just get one Fury, boop, pop right there, shoot in here, and then they lose control of their ship. But also, I thought it would be cool if you can fit Furies in there, then as a Banu Merchantman pilot, I would stick or I'd stick Furies in this dill around the turret. Put like 4 of them in there, and then when you deploy it, you just doot, 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 pop your turrets, and you have like 5 little floating turrets here. Because it seems weird to me that the Banu Merchantman can only have 1 Banu Defender in here, even though they have amazing gas mileage. Like you could probably have a fleet of Banu Defenders just rotating and refilling in here, but it's also kind of annoying. Oh, sometimes I think about getting rid of that ship, but I don't know. See, like these things right here retract for those size 8s to slide out. But that means there's going to be a gap behind the size 8s where this armor isn't. I still wonder what this is half the time. Like, why would you have... See, I don't know if this is the current model or not, but like, why would you have this big... whatever the hell this is in the front of this thing? Like, look at how many moving parts the ship has. Like, the wings fold in and out. The hangar bay has like all these little sections that are going to fold into somewhere. These things fold out. So then what the hell is all these panels here for? Unless this folds out or something. Like, what is this? Like, this almost, like, it kind of looks like a fuel intake right here, maybe. Like, maybe this is 2 fuel intakes, and this is like the engine. It just seems weird that you'd have these panels that look like they would be able to like get moved out of the way. It is a nice looking ship though. Doesn't look anything like the Banu Defender really though. This white. If this was black, like, oh, pure black. Yeah. That's nice. Like, this is nice. But you also look at the Kraken. Because, like, there's a pirate guy I used to debate about the, Banu Merchantman versus the Kraken, and he always said that the Kraken would win. But he was always pulling shit out of his ass. Like, he was like, the Kraken shoots torpedoes. And I was like, where the fuck did they say the Kraken shoots torpedoes? I wish I could. Maybe it's this one. Yeah. I personally think that the Kraken is not going to be as strong as people hope it is at all. But I do think it's going to be cheaper to operate and run. Because I have a very, very, very big suspicion and a big weak spot in my fleet is that I am planning on putting a lot of missiles and torpedoes and stuff on my ships. And the Kraken does not have warship armor, which makes me worry that if somebody shoots and hits my stockpile of ammunition, that it would blow the whole ship up. Because if I had like size 9 torpedoes and stuff in this Kraken, or even like size 3 missiles, and somebody hit this cargo bay and it blew up this deck or something, it'd be bad. But also, this ship has, like, we don't know how the new like Maelstrom and stuff, how all that affects, but the big turret on this ship is on the very tip of the ship. So you're practically not even going to be using this unless you're going directly into like a really big fight against something. And then you have like this tiny ass turret here. I think there's another one on the bottom. But if you have ships on the deck, this can't really shoot through the ships. So this is going to be stuck kind of like at this front angle. And then there's turrets like underneath these winglets, I think, which would have like these ground angles. Then you have this tiny turret. There's a lot of blind spots. You have like this tiny turret and this turret. But there's a lot of like blind spots around the Kraken that I worry about. And originally, I wanted to have 4 Redeemers on this ship with size 5 turrets. So you just have like a fucking wall of turrets on the side of the ship. But as I've slowly decreased the size of my fleet, I don't have as much turret coverage as I'd want. But my argument with this was that basically this is the front turret for the Kraken. Never mind that it has a like cargo elevator thing, tram that brings supplies through here. But if the Maelstrom stuff ever makes it to where these tunnels can get blocked off to get to these turrets, you could have problems. There's like a number of things. Or if you're like running ballistics on these turrets and you're like dragging ammo through here to like reload the ballistics somehow, I could see problems with that if like the supply tram gets disrupted. But the Banu Merchantmen, my debate with this basically was that the Banu Defenders have a lot better range than other fighters. They're really fuel efficient. They have a lot of capacity. And the Banu Defenders are basically almost like drop ships because you can have like 3 people on those ships. So you have 2 beds and the co-pilot, and in the future you might need 2 pilots, but theoretically you could probably get away with 1. And then, so basically, you could have Banu Defenders surprise this thing, land on the deck, drop off multiple people on the deck to attack it, or the Banu Merchantmen could fly around the back end and hit the Kraken in the engines. because the Banu Merchantman has 2 size 8, I believe, I don't know if they're gimbaled or not, but they have like 2 size 8 front guns, which I think the Kraken, I don't remember if these are size 8. I think these were size 7s. They could be size 8s, I don't remember. I don't think it's going to tell me on that. Kraken. Weaponry. So size 8 manned turret. Size 8 manned, but the Banu Merchantman could potentially be pilot controlled, if not, co-pilot controlled or something. So if the Banu Merchantman has pilot controlled front guns, then that would be pretty nuts to have pilot controlled size 8s. But there's a lot of crew on the Merchantman, the Merchantman. But basically, if those size 8s hit the back of this, you're probably going to have a problem. You could potentially have a number of Banu defenders swarming this ship. But I think the big weakness with the Kraken, because when you look at like the Q&A stuff or like the developers talking about this ship, when they're talking about defending it, they talk about this hallway down here. And they're talking about how there's like a number of doors that blockade the area for like defense if someone tries to board your ship. But some stuff that I've seen shows that so the Dragonfly Bay is back here in the back of the ship, and then there's some, I don't know if it was a walkthrough or if there was there's something about there potentially being an elevator in the Dragonfly Bay so that you could take the elevator to get there from this area. So you go from here, elevator, Dragonfly Bay, and then deploy out the back. But that also means, if that's possible, that people could attack the Kraken from the back, bust open this Dragonfly Bay, drop in here, go down the elevator, and then go right up the back side into the cockpit area. Which, doesn't sound too bad. But I really want to know if this thing can hold vehicles and like deploy them. So like you have these cargo storage areas, and then they sectioned them off so that it wouldn't have so much cargo that people could just like abuse it. But then they have this cargo area down here, which is connected to the elevator, I believe. And if I could hold URSAs or like tanks or anything in there, I would really like to use this as a vehicle bay. Land this on the ground, deploy the vehicles out here. Just like extra storage for my fleet, because I'm planning on using a lot of URSA rovers and like rock mining vehicles. Yeah, this picture right here. So you've got this Dragonfly Bay, elevator shaft. This is also part of the Dragonfly Bay, apparently. So you got elevator shaft that goes down. And it looks like the elevator potentially goes out, like it looks like it has a door here, which goes into the fuel area. So this is a big, big weak spot. If this actually works the way that I think it's working here, it means that you can attack the Dragonfly Bay, break in, go down the elevator, go directly to the fuel stores on the ship, which are right underneath the bridge. If you blew these up, like if they had bombs or something that you could set in here and then leave and detonate, or if you just had to suicide on this, that's a big problem. Because if this goes off, you got the cargo area right underneath you, got the bridge right above you. Like you're basically going to detonate the center mass of the ship in all directions. Like this is like the moment where you're like, hey, surrender or this whole ship is going to blow up. But if this goes any lower, I don't know what this is. There's like 2 silos right there. There's a stairwell right here. So you got an elevator and a stairwell from the Dragonfly Bay. I have no idea what that is, though. But it almost looks like this elevator goes down to this as well. And this looks like the tram system to go back and forth from the cargo area. But it's hard to tell if this goes all the way down or not. If it does, then that means that you could go from this elevator. I mean, because it looks like there's a spot right here as well. So it might just be... like, where the hell would that go to? But yeah, if you get access to the tram, you could pop up at any one of these pads. I think if you take the tram, you got pretty good access to most places. You'd probably do like a frontal, like pinch it both sides. Then they get on the tram, transport them over. But you control these fuel pods. You probably control the ship. If they can be exploded in any manner, I would expect that to be a big problem. Javelin's such a big fucking ship. I don't know how people have a big interest in the Javelin. Like, I get that it's powerful, but if that thing can't land on a planet, to me, it's just kind of lame. I'd prefer to have this, like, half the size or like a third of the size, land on a planet. Any case, I want to play a little bit of the game today. I'll restart the stream because this video went way over the time. I was planning on doing like 40 minutes, but then I just kept recording it while we were talking, so I'm going to restart the stream here in a second.